And I'll just use this. Yeah, I just sent him to the Shadow Realm. All right. Hey everyone, it's Tiqqle, and in this video we're going over Frost Death Knights. One of the probably the most hyped up class, because they are bringing back two-handers to Frost, not just dual wielding, which has got a lot of people excited. But then people kind of tested it out, and we'll talk about it a little bit, and a little unsure of the outcome, but we'll jump to that. But anyway, like every video, guys, I am going to just say in the comments below, in the description, whatever, below, I have my Druid, my Shaman, my Hunter, my Espriest, all those guides of what the heck is going on in Shadowlands, what has changed, is down in the description. Make sure to check those out if you are curious about those classes. And if you want a different class, like I'm going to be doing Monk, DH, all of those, I'm going to be doing those on stream first. I'll be going through, reviewing questions with you guys in case you guys know monks and DHs, you're professional monks and DHs. Come by the stream while we're testing, ask me the questions, let's try out the builds, and then I'll bring all that information back to these videos about the certain class and certain spec. This will be tips and tricks given to me by the chat for Frosty cases we were playing on the stream, so check that all down in the description. Let's jump into the changes, though. We're going to go over a few things first. We're going to go over the Death Knight tab in general, and then we'll go over into the specific Frost ones, and then we'll talk about the talents. Number one thing, just to keep it a reminder, we're level 50. Max level is 60. We're about 75-ish. Eye level, the squish is real, only about 10, 11k health. Keep that in mind as you're seeing these damage numbers, because it's a little bit different than 450,000 like it is in BFA today. Now, let's go to Death Knight specifically. Now, guys, every class will have their own class ability tab. This is the tab where it's pretty much the abilities that will be across every single spec, which is very cool. Blizzard's bringing back that class identity. There are some things you're already looking ahead. I can see you guys' eyes. You're already looking at Anti-Magic Zone. Yes, they have brought some stuff back. Yes, they have changed some things. And Death Knights have gotten a bunch of flavorful items and flavorful abilities that I would say bring it to life a little bit more and make it a little bit more interesting. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Number one, you see a lot of abilities here that are exactly the same. Anti-Magic Shell, Chains of Ice, Death Strike healing for minimum 10% health, just in case you guys are curious if it changed. There it is. Or 40% of the damage taken in the last 5 seconds. We do now get Anti-Magic Zone baseline. That is actually pretty darn cool, to be honest. The fact they brought that and they gave that to every Death Knight is pretty cool, because I do appreciate that for the Mythic Plus potential that gives, and the rating cooldown potential. I do like that very much. You get Taunt, Lichborn baseline. Lichborn, draw upon the unholy energy to become undead for 10 seconds, increasing your leech and making you immune to fear, sleep, charm. Pretty cool. Increasing your leech by 10%. That means, okay, you're going to be able, your damage is going to do some, is going to give you some health back, but there's some other little tricks I will get to in a little bit. Death's Advance, giving you a mobility. You cannot be slowed below 70% of normal speed. That's all good. That's all fine. Deathgate, Path of Frost, same. Howling Blast, same. Mind Freeze, same. Now, Raised Dead is different. Now, as a Frost Death Knight in BFA, you cannot get a pet. Well, guess what? You can now, but it's a little bit different. The Raised Dead is a ghoul that you can get for, it's a 2-minute cooldown. The ghoul will live for 1 minute, which means you'll have it up every 2 minutes for 1 minute. So you'll have 1 minute with it up, 1 minute when it's not, 1 minute when it's up, 1 minute when it's not. And that's just a ghoul boy. You don't have, you can't control it. It's just alive, and we'll get into why that is pretty cool coming right up next. Next, you know, Runeforging, we'll get into that. That is a big one. Runeforging has changed a bunch. There are a lot of additional ones. Death Coil has changed a little bit more flavorful, back to the way it used to be, I guess. I didn't actually know this until chat told me. Fires a blast of unholy energy at the target, causing 300% or 300 shadow damage to an enemy, or healing an undead ally for 1300 HP. What does that mean? Well, what it means is I can heal my undead ghoul here. I'm going to heal him with... Ready? I'm going to heal him. Healed him for 1.3k. That's pretty cool. Now, is it the biggest deal ever? No, but it's pretty cool that I can heal my pet, especially because that's what Death Coil itself. The other key thing here, you might be wondering to yourself, well, Tiqqle, wait, what? Wait, Tiqqle, wait. You said earlier that Lichborn makes you undead for 10 seconds. Oh, I did. And guess what that means? That means if I get my runic power up, that means if I pop Lichborn, I popped it, that means I can heal myself, the Death Knight, for a huge amount. 1300 is actually a really big heal, doubling if I crit to 2.6k. That is a big heal, and that is very cool. That's a very cool interaction of those two abilities. I like that, Blizzard. I like that a lot. That's a cool little class fantasy type thing that's nice. Now, not only, sure, okay, now I have Death Strike and I have Death Coil, but guess what? That's cool. That makes it multi-dimensional healing, and I appreciate that, Blizzard. I appreciate that a lot. Now, what else is here? Death Grip, normal, control undead, raise ally. This is battle res on a pale horse, increasing the mount speed. Yeah, that's fine. But the cool thing here is the Death Coil, the raise ghoul, baseline zone, and Lichborn. That is very cool, and I commend Blizzard for that. The only other change is a new ability that we don't quite have yet in the alpha. It's called Sacrificial Pact. Sacrifice your ghoul to deal 400 shadow damage to 8 nearest enemies. Now remember, Blizzard is controlling the AoE, all right? They're controlling the ability to cleave too many targets at once because maybe it was too memey in BFA, maybe made things not balanced. I think it's a push towards MDI, trying to become more mainstream. So that's that. Now, it is pretty cool, and so it does an AoE damage to 8 targets and heals you for 25% of your max health. So Death Knights are becoming a heal machine. Not surprising, but the way you do it is a little bit different than just spamming Death Strike, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that. So yeah, we don't have that yet, so we can't test it out, but summoning Ghoul is probably going to be to summon to sacrifice it, to be honest. So that's that, and those are the abilities for the Death Knight on the base tier. All these abilities will be across pretty much across all the Death Knight specs. Okay, keep that in mind. Now, if I go to Frost, now we're going to go through the abilities that are just Frost. Now, number one, they brought back. I'm going to jump to the bottom. They brought back Death and Decay. I thought that was an interesting move, but it is a very Death Knight type of thing. Corrupts the targeted ground, causing 210 shadow damage every 10 seconds in the area. While you remain in the area, your Scourge Strike will hit all enemies near the target. Kind of interesting that they gave that to everyone, or at least they gave that back to Frost, I should say. Kind of a curious move, but it is what it is. Now let's go through all the other buildings. Blinding Sleep, that's a talent. Anything that says talent, that's not baseline Frost. Empower Runic Weapon, Icebound Fortitude, these are all same. Remorseless Winter, Frost Strike, that's a talent. Pillar of Frost, Obliterate. But now Pillar of Frost, let's go back to Pillar of Frost. Now in BFA, Pillar of Frost had a lot of different ways it got a buff through its Azurite power, so that when you press Pillar, it would actually do a Frost Breath path out in front of you and spawn little Whelplings. Well, it doesn't do that now. It just simply, because you have to remember, no Azurite traits, no essences, we are very happy about that because it makes it so you're just your class skills, your spec skills, and your talents. That's it. That's the way it should be. Now, you don't have any of those things, right? Now, what it does is it just empowers your the power of Frost increases your strength by 20% for 15 seconds. Each rune spent while active increases your strength by an additional 1%. It's pretty cool. Big cooldown. Now, when I press it, the animation's actually a little bit different. I'm emanating kind of Frost out from me with a new, I forget what it's called, but yeah, the ability, and actually just looks very different. It's a different animation that's going out from me. It's very, very cool, and I do like the troll look as well. So I just wanted to show you that different animation. And there's nothing here, though, that is differentiating two-handed from two-hander from dual wield, which is a little unfortunate because what Blizzard appears to have done is made them just be appearance differences. I've done some testing, and we'll do it again. You'll see my damage log here. Melee hits are roughly the same. Damaging abilities are roughly the same. It's not scaling off of your weapon anymore. It's scaling off of your stats. So that's just something to keep in mind, because I know there's a lot of people hyped about two-handed Frost, but it doesn't quite feel like it is as crazy scaling difference between the two. And we'll get in. We have a lot of stuff to cover for Frost DK, but that's that. Let me finish off the abilities by showing you what it looks like to Frost Wyrm Fury. So I'm going to Death Grip. This is what it does. Ready? It brings in the big boy. It actually does a ton of damage, by the way. It did over 2k damage. Over 2k damage is actually a lot in the alpha. Let me try to. Oh, that's like that's pretty similar to a Sunder from a Enhanced Shaman. That's pretty similar to. I'm trying to think. That's more than a Star Search from a Boomkin. That's double on aim. That's 2 aim shots. I mean, it's a lot of damage. So that's pretty decent. Especially because it's going to hit everything in its path, which is pretty good for its cleave. Another thing you'll see is, well, actually, we shouldn't look at PvP talents because PvP talents have not really been modified yet, or really balanced or considered. So I wouldn't really put any thought into what's there right now. They're currently kind of looking into that. They put some posts about that. But anyway, let's go into the talents next, and then we'll go into the Runeforging, and then we'll go into the two-handed versus dual wield. Onto the talents. Frost DK only lost Frostworm's Fury because it is now a frost ability by baseline, and they've replaced it with Hypothermic Presence. Embrace the ice in your veins, reducing the runic power cost of your abilities by 35% for 8 seconds. Does not trigger the global cooldown, which could be used for either spamming your your runic power dumpers, which are Death Coil, which could potentially heal you in Lichborn. Maybe that's a way you can spam heal yourself, or you can be used on Death Strike, or it could be used on Frost Strike for more damage. So that's the main changes for the talents. Nothing else has really shifted very much. The only other thing is that Ice Cap does increase the amount of seconds that it takes off from Pillar of Frost to 4 seconds. I think previously it was 3 seconds. 3 seconds to 4 seconds. So that's now so that actually makes this more valuable of a talent. But otherwise, everything else is pretty much the same. Now, it can all be used with two-handed or dual wield, so that has to be kept in mind. But otherwise, that's about it for Frost talents. Now let's go into the Runeforging. The Runeforging has changed quite a bit, and by that I mean they've changed, or I should say they've added a lot of different runes. So these can go onto either your two-hander or your two one-handers if you're dual wielding as Frost. So let's just go through them. Rune of Hysteria affixes your rune weapon with a rune that increases the max runic power by 20, giving you 120, and your attacks have a chance to increase your runic power generation by 20% for 8 seconds. That actually seems pretty useful, especially because Death Strike is, at least in PvP, is a good use of dumping that runic power. Now in PvE, maybe it is going to be good to be able to use more Frost Strikes, but it's hard to say, or Death Coils, but I don't know if you want to be able to spend that many globals Death Coiling or Frost Striking, to be honest. But this may be useful. Now, Razor Ice is exactly the same. Sanguination is something new. Affixes your rune weapon with a rune that causes your next Death Strike to deal increased damage based on the target's missing health. We're assuming that that means you're going to do more damage the less health they have. This is almost like an Execute, which is pretty cool that they're giving Death Knights that. We don't know how much increased damage that will be, but it will be increased. And it also says after that, when you fall below 35% health, you will heal for 50% of your maximum health, basically taking you from 35 to 85, which is kind of crazy, to be honest. And I don't know how often that can proc. I haven't tested that out yet, but it does seem like a really big self-heal without really pressing any buttons. I'm just going to keep going as I kill this mob. Now, spell wording affixes your rune weapon with a rune that deflects 3% of all spell damage and has a chance to create a shield that absorbs magic damage equal to 10% of your max health, which is like 1,000, which is pretty decent. When the enemy does damage, when the enemy damages the shield, their cast speed is reduced by 10 seconds. This is a pretty flavorful one. It's actually the one I'm using right now in my weapon to just try it out. To be honest, I haven't sensed it. I haven't felt the difference of it, but I will say when it procs, I do get a purple anti-magic shell that's around me, that's pretty cool. A little bit more interactive in the world, right? Next, Apocalypse. Affix your rune weapon with a rune that gives your ghoul attacks a chance to apply one of the following debuffs to the target: Death, healing reduction; War, increased damage taken by the Death Knight; Famine, reduced damage taken by the Death Knight; or Pestilence, slows the target and deals damage over time. And this can stack up to 5 times. Now, Ghoul, as I'll remind you, is on a 2-minute cooldown, only lasts for 1 minute. So is that really that good? Hard to say. Especially right now. I think for Unholy it will be good, potentially, but for Frost I don't think that's going to be very good. Fallen Crusader is the same, healing you for potentially 6% and increases the total strength that you have by 15% for 15 seconds. Rune of Stone, Stone Skin Gargoyle, affixes your two-handed weapon with a rune that increases armor by 5% and all stats by 5%. I think these are normal, along with Razor Ice. This last one is also new. Affixes your rune weapon with a rune that grants 10% haste and movement speed and heals you for 5% of your maximum health when you kill an enemy that yields honor or experience. Additionally, increase your movement speed while dead by 10%. Now, I think there's some combinations here that could be very good, but now you have to think is now that they brought back two-handed Frost, you have to make a decision. Are you going to use one rune? Is one rune enough? Or if you go dual wield, you'll be able to put on 2 runes. So that gives you a significant advantage. You could get, let's say you go for max runic power and you get increased runic power generation, and then you also go Fallen Crusader for more self-healing. You're going to be healing or potentially healing for a lot with all that runic power, and you also get the Fallen Crusader proc. Oh, you want to do something different? Let's do Razor Ice. Increases, basically extra weapon damage as frost damage and increases the frost damage by 15%. Maybe that's usually thought to be required for a frost DK. But so that's basically the decision that you're going to have to make, and that is something that makes people a little bit disappointed with the two-handed frost, is that you're going to have to make those decisions, dual wield versus frost, and those are the things you're going to have to weigh, because so far the damage seems pretty identical. Animations are not different. I mean, they are different. It's two-handed versus dual wielding animations, but otherwise this is really where the two-handed versus the dual wield comes into play. Next, so let me know what you think about in the comments about these runes. Let me know what you think, and what we'll do next is I will show you the difference between two-handed and dual wield, and then you'll be able to see the damage differences and then understand, okay, really the problem or the struggle between two-handed and dual wield will be in the rune department. So let's go ahead and test out the damage for two-hander and dual wield. This is something that people have been very excited about, but there's already been some lackluster responses in the community about. So let's just go ahead and look. We're going to look at the melee damage, and we're going to look at the obliterate damage. Obliterate being the ability in the past that has done huge damage that people get really excited about. So let's go ahead. Let's take a little bit of a look here. My damage meters are here, and I also have a recount down here. Combat log is what I mean. All right, so let's just start meleeing. I have the two-handed weapon on. I do have a enchant on it, or a rune weapon perk on there. That isn't that great for this, but it's a decent check. It's right here, Rune of Spell Warding. You can see it's actually procced right now. It's kind of cool, a little bit different. But anyway, so I'm meleeing. Okay, we have some melee hits. They're around 210 damage, and the crits are 410 damage. All right, seems cool. All right, we're gonna go ahead and hot swap to dual wield. Remember, we had 210 to 450. Well, as like 410. So now if I'm meleeing, so let's go ahead and just turn our backs. We have the Unholy Strength, right? Now let's turn and hit him. Melee twice. I hit for 160. Actually, the offhand crit. So I melee twice. I hit for 80 and 160. Let's go ahead and do it again. All right. Okay. I hit for 150 and then I crit. Let's go ahead and get one non-crit. I need to crit, not crit on both of my weapons. Okay, they crit again. One of them crit. Okay, there you go. I got 150 and 75. So 150 plus 75 is 225. And then that was dual wield. And then one-hander was hitting for 210. Or two-handed was hitting for 210. Crits for 450. Interesting. Okay. So that's the deal. That's the breakdown. About roughly the same, 210 to 225 with 225 being a little bit more from dual wield, but yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. So melee wise, stat distribution wise, it seems like the melees are hitting for roughly the same. Now DPS is about the swing time, right? But without that being brought into this as a factor, pretty much they're almost identical in how much damage they're doing, so I'm assuming the swing timer is the same. Now I'm not 100% sure there, but I'm assuming. Now the other thing, and let me know down in the comments if I'm wrong there, it would be good to know. Now what I want to do is I want to show you the obliterate damage. So let's use the two-hander, or the dual wield. Ready? I'm going to obliterate. That was main hand crit, offhand crit. That was a double crit. That's probably the best, highest damage case I could get. And then both non-crit. So both of them non-critting. Let me just death strike so I don't die. And I'll just use this. Yeah, I just sent him to the Shadow Realm. All right, so we had dual wield. We had about 120 plus 240 or 250. So that's about 375. 375 for oblit non-crit. The crit version was 440 plus 220, which is about 660. So that's pretty cool. All right, so now we know that. Let's go ahead and check the two-handed version. Check two-handed version. Here we go. That may have had some procs up from Fallen. What is it called? The Fallen Crusader, but that's okay. All right, here we go with the oblit. All right, we hit with an oblit for 333. We hit with an oblit. It crit for 667. Okay, so 333 non-crit, 667 crit for the two-hander. This is not what I'm doing on stream, by the way, guys, too, in case you guys are curious what we do on stream or the things that we're testing and how we're testing them. We're basically literally looking at the numbers, and that's showing us the breakdown. So again, I wrote it down, right? So dual wield had a normal hit of 375. Then the two-hander actually was a little bit less in damage. Interesting. Was 333. And then crit was about the same. Two-hander crit a little bit higher, but again, that could just be the secondary stats, you know, on the two-hander versus the two one-handers. So that's possible. But otherwise, they're roughly they're like the same, truthfully. And I'm actually surprised to see dual wield a little bit higher there, because usually I was thinking that two-hander was. So roughly they're about the same exact damage, which is kind of curious because people were very excited that Obliterate, even specifically Obliterate, was going to be doing much more damage like it used to do in the Wrath, etc. So with that being said, I mean, it's a little bit upsetting. Let me know down in the comments what you think about this. And that's the numbers. So it looks like two-handed versus dual wield is approximately the exact same. Approximately the exact same, what I mean. Anyway, the other thing I want to show you is I personally, the reason I like it is I like the look of two-handed. Two-handed just looks better to me. I feel more like Arthas. The abilities are just kind of smoother. I don't know. I like it a lot more. And especially this troll animation. When do you see a troll Death Knight? I'm sure we're going to see someone in the comments saying they're troll Death Knight. This is dual wielding. The spin, I feel like much more roguey, but I don't feel like I should. Using plate, I feel like I should be using these big cleaving motions. That's why I do appreciate what Blizzard did. They did include the two-handed. Seems like they made everything work in the same way in terms of rotation and abilities. It's good and it's bad. It's good because you can use a two-hander now. That's cool. Not so hyped that it's not a different play style. It's not, doesn't seem to be changing how a Frost Death Knight does the damage. That part's a little sad, but it is what it is. And to be frank, I like it. I think it's a pretty safe move for Blizzard to make, to be honest with you. Pretty safe move in the effect of they don't have to balance it differently. They don't have to think of it any differently than dual wield, except for one thing. Now, obviously, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but on the two-hander, you can only get one Runeforge, and I put Rune of Spell Warding because I'm a meme. On the two one-handers, you get Razor Ice, and I'm putting Fallen Crusader. You can buff two of them. You get two procs, and there's nothing in the Runeforge that says that being buffed on a one-hander is less or more effective than being buffed on a two-hander. So I think that's where people are going to have to make their decisions, and I think that's where the rubber hits the road in terms of selecting one or the other. If you're going to go optimization, I'm going to have to guess dual wield's going to be the king there. If you go for cool, sexy, and you want to be a Cleave Master Blaster, you go for the two-hander. But let me know what you guys think below. I know it's a little bit, I feel like people are going to be disappointed, but at least it does exist. I can't say the same for Enhance. Enhance doesn't get any of this stuff. It's not like they built Enhance around being able to go two-handed as well. So Death Knight is blessed in that regard. And then with that being said, guys, that's going to be the video for Frost Death Knights. Appreciate all the support. Appreciate all the requests. DK was requested a lot on the stream, so I do appreciate you guys requesting that. That's why we're doing this right here, right now. We already did Hunter, Druid, Shaman, Holy Paladin, all that stuff. Guys, look down in the description for those links, and we'll see you on stream every day, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope you had a great Easter, and we will see you then. Bye, guys. Love you.